He said it like it was a fact, like it wasn't stolen from someone who'd spent years breathing life into every line of code. "I built this company from the ground up," Griffin told the investors, chin-high voice, smooth arms stretched as if he were Moses parting the Red Sea. The click of the slide behind him showed a smiling graphic of the EduLaunch logo with his name under it, founder and CEO. And I sat 3 rows back, watching it all unfold with my hands locked in my lap palms, damp jaw clenched so tight it ached. No one turned to look at me. Why would they? I wasn't introduced. I wasn't on the slide. I wasn't mentioned. To everyone in that polished Denver conference room, I was just another quiet support person in a blazer taking notes for the man on stage. But I am Soraya Llewellyn, 32 years old, software engineer, architect of EduLaunch's entire back-end infrastructure, founder of the damn thing, and the man up there basking in attention is my brother. Griffin had always been charming. The kind of man who could make a stranger laugh in 30 seconds, close a deal over coffee, get out of a speeding ticket with a compliment and a smile. Our mother called it his people gift. I called it camouflage. Because while everyone saw his easy smile and confident pitch, they missed the lies in his wake, the way he slid credit off other people's plates and onto his own like it was just business. But today was different. Because today, for the first time, someone was paying attention. It happened near the end of his presentation. Griffin had just wrapped his final slide, something about future projections and scaling with purpose, when one of the senior partners at Embermark Capital, a woman named Lydia Hahn, lifted her pen and narrowed her eyes. "Interesting projections," she said, her tone neutral, "but before we move forward, I'd like to understand the technical stack a little better. You mentioned proprietary learning algorithms. Can you elaborate on how those were developed?" Griffin smiled a touch too tight and glanced my way. "Well, my sister Soraya here helped out a bit with the early development. She's a coder." He waved vaguely toward me like I was a borrowed laptop charger. Lydia's gaze followed. "Miss Llewellyn," she said, "you helped develop the core product." I felt every pair of eyes shift to me. Griffin looked amused. I could see it in the way his shoulder relaxed. He thought I'd do what I always did: nod, deflect, minimize. Be small enough not to threaten him. And for a heartbeat, I wanted to. Old habits are hard to kill, especially ones forged in years of being told your voice wasn't the important one. But Lydia was still watching me. And there was something in her look, something sharp and deliberate that cut through the fog of old loyalties. I wrote every line of back-end code, I said calmly. I built the platform from scratch during the second year of the pandemic. Griffin came in later to help with investor outreach and marketing. Silence. Thick. Undeniable. The junior associate beside Lydia began frantically scrolling through a tablet. After a few seconds, he turned the screen toward her and whispered something. Lydia's brows lifted. "We pulled the commit history earlier," she said slowly. "Your name's on every push to production." Griffin coughed. "I mean, Soraya's always been great with the tech side. She's more comfortable behind the curtain, and I handle the front-facing stuff. It's complimentary." I could see the cracks forming now. The investor to his left, an older man with salt and pepper hair and a pristine navy suit, crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. "So," he said, his voice quiet, but cutting if she built it, "why is her name nowhere in this pitch deck?" Griffin laughed. "We didn't want to confuse things. Startups need a clear narrative." That's when Lydia turned back to me. Her tone softened, but her eyes were razor sharp. "Miss Llewellyn, if you're the technical founder, why didn't you say anything?" I looked at Griffin. He was pale now, but still trying to hold it together, still hoping I'd walk it back. I took a breath and said the truest thing I'd spoken in years, because no one ever asked. And just like that, the room shifted, the temperature dropped. The light in Griffin's eyes dimmed as he realized something irreversible had happened. Lydia sat back in her chair, lips pressed into a line. Another investor began closing his laptop. Someone cleared their throat awkwardly. Griffin tried to redirect. He launched into a ramble about vision alignment and shared leadership, but it was over. The pitch had turned into something else entirely, an exposure. That moment, those 3 seconds between Lydia's question and my answer, shattered something. Not just in that room, but in me. A silence I'd carried for years finally cracked open, spilling truths that had waited too long to be heard. I didn't know yet what the fallout would be. I didn't know that in 48 hours my inbox would be full of legal questions, media requests, and one especially angry voicemail from my mother, but I knew one thing I wasn't hiding anymore. And Griffin. He had just pitched the company I built without me. But now everyone knew, and the deal shifted. The parking garage felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was the concrete, maybe the fluorescent lights, maybe just the way everything felt numb after that room, the room where I finally spoke. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time before even putting the key in the ignition. My hands were still steady. That surprised me. I expected shaking tears, panic. Instead, what I felt was quiet. Not peace, something more like pause. The kind that comes after a scream when your throat is raw and there's nothing left to hold in. I had said it. Out loud, in front of Griffin, in front of people who mattered. I'd told the truth. And now I had no idea what came next. That night I did what I always did when the world felt uncertain. I went to Delia's. She opened the door before I knocked as if she'd been waiting. Delia Torres had always been my grounding wire. We met in 10th grade chemistry lab, two girls who didn't fit the mold of high school extroverts. She had her headphones in, I had my head down, and somehow we ended up lab partners for a full semester. By spring, we were inseparable. Two quiet girls with sharp minds and no patience for popularity games. She led me inside without a word. Her apartment smelled like bergamot and sage, and her calico cat Matcha gave me a single blink from the windowsill before turning away, disinterested as always. I sat on the couch while she brewed tea the way she always did when I needed time to find my voice. I said it. I told her finally, my words floating between the sound of water boiling and the faint hum of some ambient playlist in the background. Said what she asked from the kitchen, but I could hear the edge of knowing in her tone. She'd seen the call on my calendar. She knew. I told them the truth I said, that I built it, that I wrote the code, that Griffin didn't. She walked in with two mugs, handed me the one with the faded binary code printed on it, my usual, and sat beside me. And they asked why I hadn't spoken up before. I paused, and I told them no one had ever asked. Delia didn't smile, she just nodded. That's a better answer than you think. I took a sip of tea. It was hot, almost painfully so, but I didn't flinch. Pain had a way of making things feel more real. Delia watched me. So what now? That was the question. What now? I don't know. I admitted. Griffin walked out like nothing happened. Didn't even look at me. He's probably figuring out how to spin it, she said. He'll make himself the victim. Tell your parents you ambushed him. I laughed quietly, bitterly. You know what my mom said last time we talked about the company? We're so proud of what Griffin's building. I said nothing, just smiled like I was the assistant. Because they made you believe you were, Delia said. I didn't respond. But she wasn't wrong. In our house, Griffin was the achiever, the charmer, the future CEO, even when he was just doodling fake stock charts in his high school notebooks. My parents fed it. My father especially, he saw Griffin as the reflection of everything he wanted in a son. Assertive, confident, salesman to the bone. When Griffin pitched a lemonade stand idea at age 8, Dad took him to Office Depot to buy a cash box and made him wear a tie. When I built a rudimentary webpage in middle school that lets you track your homework assignments, he patted my head and asked if I wanted to learn Excel instead. To them, Griffin had vision. I had hobbies. When I launched EduLaunch from our garage in the spring of 2020, it was Griffin who suggested he help with branding and outreach. You're brilliant, he'd said, but this thing needs polish. It needs face. At the time, it felt collaborative, fair, even. I hated public speaking, hated explaining technical terms to people who didn't want to understand them. Griffin made it easier, but slowly, my name stopped appearing. First on pitch decks, then on media packets. Then, even among family. When Mom referred to me as Griffin's tech assistant during Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I just smiled and refilled her wine glass. I'd convinced myself it didn't matter. that staying small meant staying safe. But that lie broke today, in that conference room, with that one question. Why didn't you say anything? Delia reached over and took my mug, set it on the table, and met my eyes. You don't have to go back to invisible Soraya. You've got everything you need to make them see you. Don't let Griffin walk away with your life's work. My phone buzzed on the couch between us. A text. Griffin. We need to talk. Tomorrow. At the house. Just us. I stared at it for a few seconds, then showed Delia. He wants to play it cool, she muttered. Make it seem like you overreacted. I know. You going? I don't know. She leaned back and studied me. Do you want to? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure yet. But deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't just about a meeting. This was a pivot point, a place where old patterns either snapped or solidified, and I was tired of living in patterns that didn't belong to me. I stood to leave a little later, wrapping my scarf as Delia walked me to the door. Let me know if you want backup, she said. Thanks, I said, but I think I need to face him alone. She nodded. Just remember who built it, not who said it first, not who sold it loudest. You. I nodded, stepping into the cold night air. The Denver skyline glittered in the distance like code on a screen, messy, brilliant, and waiting to be rewritten. Tomorrow I'd go see Griffin, and this time I wouldn't let him talk over me. Griffin chose the diner like it was neutral ground. Not our parents' house, not his condo in Lodo, a place we used to go as kids on Saturday mornings, sitting in sticky booths ordering blueberry pancakes while our dad read the business section and our mom divided her attention between us and her phone. That booth was still there, worn red vinyl-chipped Formica table, the same smell of burnt coffee and fryer oil clinging to everything. When I walked in, Griffin was already seated, coffee in hand, wearing a button-down shirt he probably hadn't ironed. He looked like he hadn't slept much, but his smile came easy as always. Too easy. Hey, Soraya, he said like this was just another brunch. Like he hadn't spent 3 years erasing me in plain sight. I slid into the booth across from him, not smiling. You said you wanted to talk. He held up a hand, peacekeeping gesture. Yeah. Look, first I shouldn't have left the meeting so fast. That was on me. I said nothing. He sipped his coffee. You kinda blindsided me, you know. I didn't expect you to. He hesitated, choosing his words. Go public like that. I didn't go public, I said calmly. I answered a question. Sure. Yeah, but in front of investors? He leaned forward. You made me look like I'd lied. You did lie, Griffin. His jaw twitched. Just a little. I've been the face of the company because you never wanted to be. He said like he was reciting something practiced. You hate pitching. You said that. And that gave you the right to claim you built it. He let out a slow breath. It's not that black and white. You do the code, I do the people. That's how we've always worked. I stared at him, the silence stretching. Griffin. My name wasn't even in the pitch deck. He looked away. And that's when it shifted again, something small behind his eyes. Like he knew this wouldn't be easy to talk his way out of, like he was trying to calculate how much truth he could admit without giving up control. So what's really going on? I asked. You're not this rattled over one meeting. He hesitated, then reached into his bag and pulled out a folder, slid it across the table like it was nothing. What's this? I asked, opening it. What I saw made my stomach twist. It was a letter of intent, a formal agreement between Griffin and a venture firm called Strathmore Ridge Capital. It detailed a $3.8 million seed investment. Terms were outlined, equity shares listed. One name was on every page under founder and CEO, Griffin Llewellyn. Not Soraya, not a single mention. This is dated 2 weeks ago, I said, voice flat. He didn't meet my eyes. It was just an initial conversation. Nothing binding. Griffin, this isn't a pitch. This is a deal. I flipped through page after page. He'd sold the rights to my platform, to my architecture, to the idea I'd built from a one-bedroom apartment on an old ThinkPad, and he was sitting there like it was just a technicality. You were going to cut me out, I said. No, Soraya. I was going to bring you in once it closed. I just needed to establish the narrative. It's easier for investors if there's one clear founder. Once the funding came through, you were going to make me your CTO. Silence. I looked at him and I finally saw it. Not panic, not guilt, just the same calculation he always used. What can I get away with? What story do I need to tell? This was never about teamwork, I said. You never saw me as an equal. That's not true, he said quickly. You're brilliant, Soraya. But let's be honest, do you really want to deal with investors and equity negotiations and hiring plans I was trying to protect the company? I mean, come on, what's wrong with you getting a nice salary, stock options, doing what you love, and letting me handle the rest? Because I didn't build this to work for you, Griffin. His mouth opened, then closed again. I pushed the folder back across the table. How far along is this? They want an answer by the end of next week, he admitted. I was going to tell you, I just needed a few more days. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. You mean you needed me to keep my mouth shut until the ink was dry? He didn't deny it. I stood to leave. I want full access to everything you've sent them. Every email, every file. If my code is in it, I have rights. You're not thinking clearly, he said quickly, rising too. You'll blow the deal. You'll blow our future. No, I said, eyes steady. I'll blow your lie. He followed me outside, trying to keep his voice low and casual. Look, I get it. You feel betrayed. But don't throw away everything we've built. We didn't build anything I said. I did. I didn't wait for his answer. I walked straight to my car and drove off heart-pounding hands steady. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop. I logged into our shared drives, our product dashboards, our investor portals. And then I changed the passwords. I backed up every piece of IP. I documented every email I had sent in the early days. Every commit log. Every user flow diagram. My digital fingerprints were everywhere. And I was going to make damn sure no one could pretend they weren't. Then I opened a new tab and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Tanya Bell, former classmate from MIT, now corporate tech attorney in San Francisco. We weren't close. But she'd sent me a LinkedIn message a year ago saying she admired EduLaunch and loved seeing women break through. She picked up on the second ring. Soraya, she said. This is a surprise. I need help, I said. Legal help. A pause. Then, you're not going to believe this, but I've heard rumors. Strathmore Ridge is shopping your platform around, with Griffin Llewellyn as sole founder. Is that true? My throat tightened. I'm afraid so. Another pause. Then, let's make sure he doesn't get away with it, Tanya said, because I've seen this movie before. But this time, you're not the footnote. The Llewellyn family dinners had always carried a strange tension, like the whole thing was being staged for an invisible audience. Everything was just a little too rehearsed, the matching place settings, the roasted meat with parsley garnish, the way my mother corrected everyone's grammar mid-conversation. It wasn't about being together. It was about being seen together. And yet when Griffin called that morning to say we'd be celebrating Dad's birthday early, just close family, I still showed up. Maybe part of me was still hoping someone would see me differently. The house hadn't changed. The same wide porch, same flower beds our mother paid someone else to maintain. Inside, the kitchen gleamed like it belonged in a catalog but smelled faintly of bleach. The only thing that wasn't pristine was the tension already hanging in the air. Griffin was carving ham in the kitchen like nothing had happened. When I walked in, he offered a smile that didn't touch his eyes. You made it, he said. Don't act surprised, I replied. We both know Mom would have had a fit if I didn't. He chuckled nervously. Let's keep it light, yeah, sure. Dad was in the den with a tumbler of bourbon flipping between football channels. He waved when I passed by. There's my girl, he said. Still glued to your computer. I gave a small nod. Something like that. Mom was arranging side dishes on the table, moving bowls back and forth like a general staging a battlefield. She wore her usual Sunday best gold studs, a scarf too much perfume. When she saw me, she pursed her lips. Soraya, do help with the water pitchers, would you? And maybe tie your hair back a bit, it's falling in your face. I did what she asked. I always did. Old habits. Dinner was polite, stiff. Griffin carried the conversation with practiced ease. He talked about partnership opportunities and funding rounds like he was the only one in the room who'd ever been near a business. He didn't mention the pitch, or the fallout, or the fact that he'd nearly signed away my company without so much as a warning. And neither did my parents. Not until dessert. I was helping clear the table when my mother set a dish down harder than necessary and said Griffin told us what happened at the investor meeting. I froze for half a second before turning to face her. He said it got a little tense. She continued wiping her hands on a linen napkin. You embarrassed him. Embarrassed him, I said slowly. She nodded unbothered. You undermined his authority, in front of professionals. My father grunted from his seat. That's not how families handle business. I stared at them. He lied. To them, to you. He erased me. My mother gave a small, forced smile. Sweetheart, you've always been more of a behind-the-scenes person. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Some people lead, some people support. You've always been wonderful at assisting. Assisting Griffin, to his credit, at least looked uncomfortable now. You do the coding, Mom said, as if that settled it. You've never liked the spotlight. We assumed that's how you preferred it. I was quiet. Too quiet. Because what could I say that they'd hear? To them, Griffin was the one who made things happen. I was the girl with messy hair and no makeup and no husband. I was the background. You know what Griffin told the investors, I said, turning to them. He told them I helped a little in the early days, that I'm just a coder, not a founder, not a leader, just someone who makes things run while he takes credit. My father took a sip of bourbon. Well, from the outside, that's not an unreasonable assumption. The words knocked the air from my lungs. My mother jumped in as if to soften it. We're not saying you're not important, dear, but you've never projected leadership. You're very good at what you do, but you're not exactly executive material. Not exactly executive material. That was what they thought of me. All this time, 3 years of building, of launching, of scaling a platform from nothing, and that was the summary. I was just the admin. I set the dish down. You think I'm just the assistant, I said, voice low. You think Griffin is the visionary, and I'm the girl who fetches water pitchers and ties her hair back. No one spoke. Then Griffin, still trying to play diplomat, said, They didn't mean it like that. We all know you're smart. But you've always struggled with visibility, I snapped. Assertiveness. Being loud enough for you to notice me. He exhaled sharply. This isn't helping. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You're right, it's not, because nothing helps. Not being brilliant, not being right, not even building something from scratch that changes people's lives. I turned to my mother. Do you even know what EduLaunch does? She blinked. It's a teaching tool. It's a full-scale adaptive learning platform with AI-driven student profiles, integrated classroom dashboards, and scalable curriculum syncing. I designed every component. Every algorithm. While you were bragging about Griffin's pitch decks, I was fixing server crashes at 3 a.m. Silence. I'm not just your daughter, I said. I'm a founder, and I'm done pretending otherwise so no one feels uncomfortable. I grabbed my coat, ignoring Griffin's attempt to call after me. Outside, the cold hit me in the face, sharp and clarifying. I didn't wait. I got in the car, turned the key, and let the silence build around me again. But this time, it wasn't empty. This time, it was mine. By the time I got home, there were 2 texts waiting. One from my mom. You overreacted. Again. This is why no one takes you seriously. And one from Tanya Bell. Call me. I think I found something in the Strathmore Ridge filings you need to see. Urgent. I stared at her message for a long moment. Something flickered in my chest, half dread, half fire. Whatever Tanya had found, I knew one thing. It was time I stopped letting people define who I was, and started showing them what happened when the admin took the mic. There was a strange calm in me as I walked into the Liberty Tech Summit, even though every cell in my body should have been on fire. The convention center buzzed with the usual startup energy sleek banners, espresso carts, founders handing out swag like their lives depended on it. And there, near the center atrium, was Griffin, wearing that damned navy blazer he always used for investor days, sleeves pushed up just enough to look effortless. He was laughing with two middle-aged men in suits, one of whom had a Strathmore Ridge badge on his lanyard. His smile was smooth, his stance open, his voice just loud enough to carry to the interns hovering nearby. Griffin Llewellyn, the face of EduLaunch. I stayed toward the back of the room, deliberately plain in a black turtleneck and flats, no makeup, hair pulled up. Invisible. Just like they were used to seeing me. Griffin spotted me after about 5 minutes and offered a tight nod. Not surprise, not warmth, just calculation. As if to say, good. You showed up, now behave. The pitch session began shortly after in a side room with theater seating and a wall of LED panels behind the podium. Griffin was announced as founder and CEO of EduLaunch, and a round of polite applause followed. I sat in the last row, one hand in my lap, the other holding my phone recording everything. He was in rare form. 3 years ago, he began, I saw a need in virtual education no one else was solving. Students were falling behind, teachers were overwhelmed, and the platforms we had were clunky, outdated, and impersonal. I bit the inside of my cheek. You saw a need. You were bartending in Breckenridge when I started writing the first lines of code. I built EduLaunch to change that. He continued, his tone full of conviction. Our platform uses real-time analytics to track student performance, adapts to learning styles, and empowers educators in ways legacy tools never could. No mention of who designed the architecture. No mention of who developed the adaptive engine. Not even a we, just I. He moved through slides with sleek UI mock-ups I had made myself, highlighted engagement metrics I had collected, demos of the dashboard I had stayed up nights to debug. Then came the Q&A. The moderator, a tall woman in a crimson blazer with an impressive resume in EdTech investment, opened the floor. A man near the front, mid-50s, silver beard, calm demeanor, raised his hand. I'm Brian Shore, he said, associate partner at Larkin Cole Ventures. I have a back-end question. Griffin smiled, confident. Fire away. Your architecture uses adaptive algorithms. Could you speak to the specific ML model your engine leverages and how you're managing drift over multi-semester datasets? Griffin's smile faltered. Well, we use a blend of adaptive frameworks. You know, it's not any one specific model, it's more of an evolving pipeline. The investor blinked. Which framework? Keras, PyTorch, Scikit. Griffin chuckled nervously. I'd have to double-check that with our dev team. I like to stay at a high level. I'm more of the big picture guy. And then he gestured to me. Actually, he said, my sister's here. She helped a little with development back in the early days. She's great with the technical stuff. I stood slowly. Not because I was ready, but because I was done being small. I made my way to the front of the room as the moderator raised an eyebrow. Miss Soraya Llewellyn. The silver-bearded man, Brian Shore, opened his tablet, eyes scanning. Interesting. Your name appears on every single GitHub commit since the platform's inception. The room hushed. Griffin shifted in place. Brian looked up. Miss Llewellyn, would you be willing to answer the technical question? I nodded. Of course. I stepped to the front like I belonged there because I did. We use a hybrid approach, I said, projecting my voice clearly. Primarily a custom implementation of Keras with layered recurrent neural nets for behavioral prediction. Drift is managed through a dynamic feedback loop integrated into our classroom dashboard. Teacher actions feedback into model weightings. We retrain every 90 days using anonymized performance snapshots and usage clustering. There was a pause. Then someone near the middle said, That's incredible. Another investor muttered, Why wasn't she listed as co-founder? I turned slowly to face Griffin. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The moderator stepped in, composed but sharp. Thank you, Miss Llewellyn. Mr. Llewellyn, you mentioned earlier that you built the platform. Would you care to clarify Miss Llewellyn's role? Griffin forced a smile. Well, of course Soraya was part of the original dev team. I just meant I oversaw the strategy while she worked on the code. I wrote the code, I said. Someone gasped. And then the line came quiet, steady from Brian Shore. Then why haven't you said anything before? I didn't blink. Because no one ever asked. The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, consequential. Like everyone in the room understood something had shifted, even if they couldn't name what. The moderator cleared her throat. We'll be pausing negotiations for today pending review of ownership records and IP claims. Griffin's mouth dropped open. Wait, what? No, this is a misunderstanding, but they were already closing laptops, backpacks zipped, chairs scraped back. I looked once more at the screen behind him where his name hovered in bold under the company logo I had designed, and I realized they finally saw me, not as a sidekick, not as a silent sister, but as the one who'd built the bones beneath the flash. There's a moment right after you tell the truth when time doesn't move. Or maybe it does, but slower, heavier. Like the air around you thickens, waiting for someone to break it. That was the room after I said it. Because no one ever asked. No one spoke. Not Griffin. Not the investors. Not the moderator. The hum of an HVAC vent was the only sound, soft and mechanical above the silence. The truth hung there raw and unforgiving. Griffin's face was frozen in a strained smile, one that didn't know where to land. His charm had nowhere to go, no room to spin it, no soft place to land. He shifted on his heels, then tried pathetically to laugh. Come on, Soraya, don't do this. That was the wrong thing to say. A woman in the front row, sleek bun and wire-frame glasses, looked at him sharply. Do what exactly I mean? Look, we're family, he said suddenly on defense. We built this together. She's great with code. I handled the business side. That's always been the arrangement. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. The screen behind him still flickered with a freeze frame from the pitch Griffin Llewellyn, founder and CEO. No mention of a co-founder. No image of me. No trace of the platform's origins in a one-bedroom apartment with nothing but post-it notes and caffeine. The room didn't buy it. Not anymore. The woman with the glasses stood. Miss Llewellyn, do you hold any legal documentation establishing ownership of EduLaunch's IP? I nodded. Yes. I've documented every commit since inception, and the original software was registered under my name 2 years ago. I also retain hosting admin credentials and back-end system access. I can submit verification. The moderator nodded slowly. Then we will suspend all further discussions with Mr. Llewellyn until this matter is resolved. Wait, what Griffin said, panic rising now. You can't just take her word for it. You don't understand the dynamics, but no one was listening. People were standing, quietly gathering their things. It wasn't a dramatic walkout. It was worse. It was dismissal, like a speaker who'd been caught plagiarizing or someone pretending to speak a language he couldn't read. The lights didn't dim. The stage wasn't pulled out from under him. But something more painful happened. The room moved on. I followed the others out slowly, not looking back at Griffin. Not needing to. Outside the pitch room in the hallway lined with vendor booths and banners, my heart finally caught up to what had just happened. It slammed once against my ribs, and I had to stop walking. My hands were trembling, my breath shallow. A woman touched my arm. She looked to be in her early 50s, gray streaks in her dark hair, sensible heels, eyes that had seen too many rooms like the one I'd just walked out of. I've sat through 27 pitches today, she said. Yours was the only one I'll remember. I wasn't even the one pitching, I said without thinking. She smiled. Exactly. Then she handed me a card. Nadia Braverman, General Partner, Portside Capital. We should talk, she said. Soon. I tucked the card into my pocket like it was a live ember, still warm, still sparking. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed in the same apartment where it had all started back when EduLaunch was just an idea and Griffin was still just my brother, not a rival. I replayed the pitch in my head, not his version, mine. Every face in that room, every word, especially one. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't think it would matter. Because I didn't want to make things worse. Because I thought they'd choose him anyway. Because I was tired of speaking up in rooms that only echoed someone else's voice back. But now, something had shifted, not just outside me, but inside. A small vibration on my desk broke the silence. A message from Tanya Bell Soraya. Call me as soon as you can. I just pulled a clause from the offshore docks. You're not going to like it, but you need to see it. I stared at the screen. Something cold crept into my stomach, because if Tanya was worried, it meant we hadn't hit the bottom of Griffin's betrayal. Not yet. And this time, I wasn't just going to sit back and take it. I was done being quiet. The first call came the next morning too early before my coffee had brewed, before I had even managed to process what had happened the day before. I recognized the number. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came from my father. This one I answered. Soraya, he said, his voice clipped. We need to talk. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask what had happened at the summit. No congratulations, no curiosity, just that tone of command he used when I was 12 and left my sneakers in the hallway. You embarrassed your brother in public, he said. I waited for a beat. He embarrassed himself. He was pitching a deal. A big deal. You undercut him in front of powerful people. He lied, Dad. Over and over. He claimed my work erased my name and tried to sell something that wasn't his. I didn't undercut him. I told the truth. He exhaled sharply. There are ways to handle things like this in private. In the family. Not on a stage. That line. In the family. I sat down at my kitchen table, suddenly cold. So it's fine that he stole credit just as long as I don't make noise about it. No one's saying it's fine, he said quickly. But you could have spoken to him, to us. We would have figured something out. You already had, I said quietly. You decided I wasn't leadership material, that I was just helping with emails, that he was the face and I was a pair of hands. There was a long silence. You made this personal, he finally muttered. You ruined everything. I hung up. The next call wasn't from family. It was from Tanya. She didn't start with hello. You sitting down? I was. Griffin tried to move partial ownership of EduLaunch's platform into an offshore entity. In the Cayman Islands, what he filed it 6 months ago under a shell corp called Veritas Bay. The deal was structured to transfer IP rights gradually in exchange for equity in a separate holding company he controls. I closed my eyes, and he did this while pitching to U.S. firms. Yep, that's the kicker. If that clause had gone through with Strathmore Ridge, you would have lost your claim entirely. A lump formed in my throat. Is it reversible legally? Yes, since you're the registered creator of the IP, and no formal transfer was signed by you, but he was counting on you never checking. Or speaking. Of course he was. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a full-blown extraction plan. Griffin hadn't just wanted credit, he wanted ownership. Legacy. He wanted to be the founder not just in name, but in control of the money, the growth, the future. He wanted to erase me. Delia came over that night. She didn't knock, just walked in like always holding 2 greasy bags of Thai takeout and a bottle of Riesling. I heard she said, "It's all over the tech blogs," I figured, I murmured. She pulled out containers, poured wine, and then sat across from me. "Your brother's a snake," she said flatly. "I know. You gonna fight him? I'm already fighting him." She nodded. "Good." Then after a pause, "Your mom called me." I looked up. "She wanted me to talk to you. Said she thought I could help you calm down." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "That sounds about right." "She said you're jeopardizing the family's name, that you're burning bridges out of pride." "Did you tell her I built the bridge?" I told her to worry less about pride and more about perjury, Delia said. I loved her for that. We ate quietly after that, the kind of silence that only exists between people who've known each other long enough not to fill every pause. When she left, I sat at my laptop for hours, reading, cataloging, gathering every bit of evidence Tanya had found. It wasn't just about ownership anymore. It was about principle, about truth, about not being erased, not again, not ever. The next day, I drafted the cease and desist letter. Tanya connected me with a firm that specialized in tech IP litigation. By the end of the week, they had reviewed the documents, verified my commit history, and filed official notice with Griffin and his counsel. He had 10 business days to respond. The day after I filed, I received an email from a mid-tier tech blog requesting an interview. I ignored it. But then, a second came, and a third. Then, a LinkedIn message from a founder I'd never met. "What you did was brave. We're watching." And we believe you. And another thank you for speaking up. My co-founder did the same to me, and I stayed silent. I wish I hadn't. By the end of the week, my inbox had 50 messages. I didn't answer them. Not yet. I wasn't ready to talk, not publicly, not while the legal wheels were turning. But I read every single one, even the one from Griffin. You didn't have to destroy me to make a point. I was always going to give you credit eventually. You just didn't trust me. You never did. No, I didn't. And now I knew why. The following morning, Tanya called again. There's more, she said. More, I asked, half dreading it. Yeah, one of the VC partners at Strathmore Ridge. She reached out to me, privately, said she's seen this before, that you're not the first woman a family member tried to sideline from her own company. What does she want? She wants to talk. And maybe... help. I leaned back, phone pressed to my ear. Help. That word felt different now. Like maybe I wasn't alone anymore. Like maybe for the first time someone saw me not as the quiet one, the helper, the sister in the background, but as what I had always been, the builder. By Monday, the cease and desist had been delivered. It was a clean document, precise, 3 pages, no fluff. It outlined every technical asset tied to my name from the earliest GitHub commits to server logs, product prototypes, database designs, timestamps, hash keys, and repository chains all intact. Tanya's firm had done their job and done it well. Griffin had 10 business days to respond. I sent it not to his personal email, but to the inbox listed on the EduLaunch pitch deck, the one where he claimed to be the sole founder. He would see it, and he would understand what it meant. I didn't expect a callback, and I didn't get one. Instead, I got silence, the kind of silence that says I'm scrambling. And that, for once, was not my problem. What I didn't expect was the phone call from Strathmore Ridge, the same firm Griffin had courted. It came in the form of a brief voicemail from their partner coordinator, followed by an email. A woman named Melanie Rourke, Senior Partner Special Investments. She wanted to speak, privately. Off the record. I didn't trust that at first. But Tanya called me 30 minutes later, already looped in. She's legit, she said. I did my research. She's been in tech investment for 25 years. Quiet reputation. Keeps her cards close. Why me, I asked. Because Tanya said you just became a very public cautionary tale, and she's not the villain in this story. In fact, she might have been you once. I agreed to meet Melanie 2 days later in a small cafe near the Cherry Creek Business District. I wore jeans, a navy sweater, no makeup again. Still not ready for press photos or staged redemption arcs. Just myself. She was already seated when I arrived. Mid-50s, sharp gray bob pearl earrings. Her presence was calm, not cold. She shook my hand with a kind of quiet respect, not forced warmth. Ms. Llewellyn, she said, thank you for making time. Soraya's fine. She nodded. And I'm Melanie. We ordered coffee, nothing else, and after the first sip, she leaned in. First, let me say this, your response during that pitch was... remarkable. I gave a half smile. It wasn't planned. That's why it worked. A beat passed before she continued. I've seen maybe 4 cases like yours in my career. Women who built something only to have a man, usually a colleague, sometimes a relative, step forward and take the microphone. I didn't say anything. You're the first I've seen who pushed back in real time. Publicly. I swallowed. It wasn't bravery. It was the only thing left. Melanie nodded slowly. That's what makes it brave. She opened a folder and slid a printout across the table. It was Griffin's Cayman registration, the same Veritas Bay shell Tanya had found, but this one had a handwritten signature on it. My signature. Forged. I stared at it for a moment too long. You're not surprised, Melanie observed. I'm tired. That'll pass, she said gently. But this won't unless you finish it. I looked up. She leaned forward again. I'm not here to offer you a deal, not yet. But I am here to tell you this. If you go to court, if you pursue full IP restoration and founder status, you will win. How can you be sure? Because the documentation is airtight and Griffin is already being investigated for prior misrepresentation in another pitch 3 years ago. He's not just a fraud, Ms. Llewellyn. He's lazy. I blinked. I didn't know about the other case. Not many do. It was sealed. But investors talk. I sat back in my chair. Let it all soak in. All those years of being small, of shrinking myself to keep the peace, of letting him take just one more inch until there were no inches left to give. And now here we were. What happens if I go public? I asked. Some people will call you bitter, Melanie said. Others will call you brave. You'll get interview requests, maybe podcast invites. You'll be a symbol to people who've never been seen. And Griffin will vanish. I thought about that. Not out of cruelty, but justice. Because this wasn't about punishing him anymore. It was about reclaiming what I had built. Melanie finished her coffee and stood. When you're ready to talk about next steps, real ones call me. Portside Capital is looking for founders with vision and spine. You seem to have both. She left me with her card. This one I didn't put in my pocket. I placed it carefully in my notebook. That night I called Tanya. I want to move forward, I said. Are you ready for press? Not yet. Then we'll let the legal side finish first. We're already drafting an ownership clarification motion. Once that's submitted, we can begin your reinstatement as founder and CEO. The words felt foreign. Founder, CEO, me, not Griffin, me. 2 days later, his LinkedIn profile changed. His title at EduLaunch vanished. The profile picture switched to a black and white headshot, no smile. And by the end of the week, the deal was gone. Investors backed out. The offshore entity was flagged. The company was frozen until clarity of ownership could be established. I had no doubt what that clarity would say. But I didn't smile. Not yet. Because I knew there was one thing left to do. And it wasn't legal. It was personal. I hadn't spoken to Griffin since the cease and desist landed in his inbox. He didn't call, didn't text, no apology, no denial, just a digital void like we had never shared a childhood, never argued over cereal or built blanket forts in the basement, or watched our mother cry quietly behind a closed door after one of Dad's lectures. But silence wasn't closure. So I went to him. It was late afternoon when I pulled up outside his condo. The air was dry, that typical Denver stillness after a long, cloudless day. His building was modern, forgettable glass and stone stacked like an afterthought. He answered after the third knock, barefoot shirt wrinkled a glass of something amber in his hand. Well, he said, voice flat. Look who decided to show up. I'm not here to fight, I said. I just want to talk. He let me in without a word. The place was dim, closed blinds, a pizza box on the coffee table mostly untouched, a laptop open to a half-written email cursor blinking like it had been blinking for hours. Griffin sat on the edge of the couch drink in hand jaw tight. He didn't offer me a seat. I sat anyway. So he said, finally, was this your plan all along? No, I said calmly. My plan was to build something that mattered. He laughed, bitter shallow. And what? Make me the villain in your redemption arc? I didn't make you anything. You did that yourself. He stood, began pacing. You have no idea what it's like to carry a room, Soraya. To have people expect you to be interesting, convincing, sellable. You got to hide behind screens and code while I had to be the face. No one asked you to lie. You think this was easy for me? He snapped. I built relationships, took meetings you never wanted, smiled for cameras while you avoided eye contact with our own parents. I didn't ask you to be the face I said. You volunteered, then you made sure I disappeared. I never meant to erase you. Yes, you did, I cut in, voice suddenly sharper. You erased me every time you used I instead of we. Every time you took credit. Every time you let Mom and Dad believe I was your assistant. He sat down hard. They never would have understood anyway. That's not an excuse. That's cowardice. The word hit. He flinched. I let the silence sit for a beat. You waited 3 years to humiliate me, he asked. I waited 3 years for you to act like a brother, I replied. You never did. He looked away. For the first time, I noticed how tired he looked. Not just tired, deflated. like someone who'd built a persona too large to maintain, and now that it had collapsed, he had nothing left to hold on to. "You could have just asked," he said finally, voice low. "I would have given you more credit eventually. You forged my name on a legal document." He didn't respond. "You tried to offshore the company I built," I continued. "You didn't just steal credit, you tried to steal the future." "Because I thought you'd never step up," he muttered. "You were always content being in the background." "No," I said. "I was taught to be. By you. By them. By every room that treated me like I was decoration." He looked at me then. For real. No deflection. Just tired eyes and whatever scraps of pride he hadn't drowned in whiskey. "So what now?" he asked. "I'm taking back the company. Officially. Publicly. The deal's dead. The IP is mine. You're out." He nodded slow and dull. I figured. "And after that," he asked. "We just go back to being strangers," I stood. "I don't think we were ever anything else," I said. As I walked to the door, he called out softer than before. "Do you hate me?" I paused, hand on the knob. "I don't know what I feel," I said honestly, "but I know what I won't feel any more small." Then I walked out. The sunlight hit harder than expected, but it felt clean. I breathed it in, deep, full. That night I didn't sleep much, but I didn't stay up out of fear. I stayed up sketching, planning. Not a revenge plan, not damage control. A blueprint. Not just for a product, but for something bigger. The beginning of something new. It started with a message from a podcast producer I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Your story matters." At first, I almost deleted it. I'd been ignoring a steady stream of interview requests, tech journalists, LinkedIn DMs, and clickbait vultures since the pitch fallout. Some wanted a woman in tech betrayal angle. Others pitched ridiculous titles like Sister versus Startup or How One Silent Engineer Took Down a Golden Boy. They weren't interested in truth, just spectacle. But this email was different. It was short. Honest. "Hi, Soraya. I run a small podcast called The Quiet Build. We talk to engineers who don't usually get the spotlight, especially women and minorities. I saw your name in that commit history tweet. And I read what happened. I'm not asking for drama. I'm asking for your voice. If you ever want to talk, the mic's yours. Mira, co-host and founder." I clicked her website. No flashy logos. Just a dark page, clean lines, black text on white. Episodes titled things like Debugging Doubt Built It Burned Out and Why No One Remembers the CTO. I listened to one while cooking, then another. Mira wasn't a showboater. She let people breathe, let them stumble, cry, laugh awkwardly. She didn't clean up their imperfections, she preserved them, so I replied. 3 days later, I walked into a tiny home studio in North Denver that smelled faintly of coffee and lavender oil. Mira was in jeans and an oversized hoodie. Her dog, a scruffy terrier mix, curled up by the soundboard. She offered me tea. Not questions, just tea. We didn't jump in. She asked if I wanted to skip anything. I said no. When she hit record, I didn't read a script. I didn't plan a soundbite. I just talked. "I built EduLaunch in my apartment during the pandemic," I said. With a borrowed laptop and a whiteboard I stole from my old job's conference room. I coded through grief and frustration and imposter syndrome so loud it was practically screaming. I didn't know if it would work. I just knew it had to. Mira asked gently, "And when did it stop being yours?" I paused. "The day I let someone else speak louder than me. And every day after that when I stayed quiet. Until I couldn't anymore." She didn't interrupt, just nodded. I told her about Griffin, about the offshore entity, about my parents calling me disrespectful, about Delia, Tanya, Melanie Rourke, the investors. The moment my name flashed on that screen in the pitch room and someone finally asked me, "Did you build this?" And I admitted something I hadn't said out loud. I wasn't waiting to be discovered. I was hiding. Because if no one saw me, no one could reject me or tell me I wasn't good enough. I thought staying invisible was safer. Mira leaned forward. "Is it?" I exhaled. "No. It just means when they take from you, no one notices." That episode went live the following Tuesday. I didn't share it, but Delia did. So did Tanya. And Mira's small but fiercely loyal audience. Within 48 hours, it hit 250,000 plays. Within 72, Inba our Edu launch trended on Twitter not for Griffin, but for me. Tech journalists picked it up again, but this time with a different tone. One headline read, "The developer behind the curtain finally steps forward." Another simply said, "She built it." Teachers began emailing me dozens, then hundreds, thanking me for the platform for the product for caring about classrooms when Silicon Valley was obsessed with crypto and social gamification. I woke up one morning to a forwarded email from Mira, subject "You need to read this." It was from a teenage girl in Ohio. 15, Hispanic, STEM student. Here's what it said. "Hi, Ms. Llewellyn. I didn't know someone like me could build something real. I thought we were supposed to just help the guys who do. My teacher played your episode for our coding club. I just wanted to say thank you. I started my first app last night. I'm naming it after my grandma. Emilia V." I cried when I read that. Harder than I had the day I walked out of Griffin's condo. Not from pain, but from release. Then, 3 days later, came the twist I didn't expect. It wasn't from the internet. It was a text from my father. "Just watched the interview. Proud of you, kid." That was it. No long apology, no groveling, just 7 words. But I reread them a dozen times, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel smaller than him. I felt like his equal, no stronger than that. I felt like me. The next day, Tanya sent over final documents. I was now the official and sole registered CEO and founder of EduLaunch. It was mine again, not just in spirit, not just in silence, but on paper in court and on record. Melanie Rourke sent flowers. Delia brought cupcakes. Mira mailed me a vintage mug that said "I speak code" in pixelated font. I cleared out my old workspace, set up a fresh one, new notebook, clean screen. No old files, no backup copies, just blank space. And I opened a new folder. Project Sovereign. No one would take this one from me, not because I'd fight harder, but because I no longer needed permission to be visible. I was here. I had always been here. The auditorium was warmer than expected. Not hot exactly, just thick with the breath of 100 women who had all in their own way fought to be taken seriously. The Women in Code Annual Summit wasn't flashy or overproduced. There were no laser light shows, no VC bros in Patagonia vests. Just folding chairs, water stations, and name tags that didn't ask for titles. Just "What are you building?" I stared at mine backstage. Black Sharpie letters on white cardstock. Soraya Llewellyn, Rebuilding Myself. Also a platform. Delia had helped me write it. Because it's true, she'd said. And because you're not just building software anymore. They'd invited me to close the afternoon session. Not as a keynote. Not as a cautionary tale. But as a builder. Tell them what you wish you'd heard Mira had suggested when I hesitated. You don't owe them a TED Talk. Just a lighthouse. I stepped onto the stage without a script. No slides. Just a microphone and a name that now belonged fully to me. I used to think ambition was a bad word I began, especially when you're quiet, especially when you're a woman. I thought success was something you earned quietly without rocking the boat, without making people uncomfortable. I thought if you were good enough, eventually someone would notice. I let that hang for a moment. No rustle, no whispers, just listening. They didn't, I said. And when someone did, it was to take credit. A few heads nodded. One woman in the second row wiped her cheek. I built a company, I continued. Every line of code, every database schema. I poured years of my life into something I believed could help teachers and students connect in a world that suddenly forgot how, and when it was time to take it public to get funding to expand, I let someone else become the face of it, because I thought they'd speak for both of us. I looked up not at anyone in particular, but through them. They didn't. More silence. But not uncomfortable. Expectant. And when I finally spoke, I said it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a speech. Someone just asked me, "Did you build this?" And I said yes. That was it. That one word cracked everything open. I took a breath. Here's what I've learned. Being silent doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for someone else to write your story. And if you're not telling your own story, someone else is. The room was still. But here's the thing: you don't need a spotlight to own your narrative. You just need your name on the code, your name on the patent, your voice in the meeting. You need to make sure when they look at what's built, they see your fingerprints. A beat. And sometimes, you have to build something new. Afterward, women came up one by one. No selfies. Just quiet, intimate moments. A college student with a trembling voice whispered, "I'm not alone." A mother of 3 said, "My daughter needs to hear that." An older woman, gray streaks in her bun, and a t-shirt that read, "C++ is my cardio," just nodded and squeezed my hand. I left with a tote bag full of stickers, a lanyard that smelled faintly of lavender, and a notebook that had one clean white page left. That night, I opened it. Scribbled 3 words at the top in block letters: Sovereign, V1.0, not EduLaunch, not a rebuild, a new platform. Not for schools this time. Not even for students. For builders. A network for female and non-binary developers, engineers, product designers, people who'd been sidelined, silenced, stepped over. A place where credits were public contributions, visible ownership tracked. Not just portfolios, but proof. Delia called the next morning. "You didn't say goodbye." I smiled. I wasn't finished. "You're really doing it," she said. "The new build." "Yeah, you need a team." "I know. And funding. Already have a meeting with Portside Capital next week. Melanie's in." Delia laughed softly. "And to think just 6 months ago you were still letting your mother call you Griffin's secretary." "I let everyone call me that," I said. "Even myself." A pause. And now she asked. I looked at the blank page still sitting open beside my laptop. A wireframe sketch had begun to take shape, nothing fancy, just blocks and notes and question marks. Now, I'm the one doing the naming. That night, I sat by my window and let myself remember not the betrayal, not the bitterness, but the beginning. The moment I first pushed deploy on the prototype of EduLaunch. The quiet thrill, the flutter of fear. Not because anyone else was watching, but because I was watching myself step into something I didn't yet believe I deserved. Now I believed it, not because the world changed, because I did. And in the silence that followed, I found something better than applause. I found peace. Sometimes a single question can undo years of silence. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't echo like thunder. It just sits there, quiet, insistent, and waits for an answer. "Did you build this?" That was it. 7 syllables, no accusation, no fanfare, just curiosity. And I remember exactly how it felt when the words reached me, like the air had cleared, like I'd been underwater for years and someone had finally opened a window. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room at the faces that had never seen me before, though I had been there the whole time. My brother's tight smile, the investors' unreadable expressions, my own hands in my lap, the same hands that had typed every line of code built, every feature debugged until 3 a.m. More nights than I could count. I nodded. That was it. Just a nod. But it was the loudest thing I had ever done. And what came after wasn't triumph, not right away. It was chaos, doubt, emails, phone calls, family disappointment, legal meetings. The exhausting unraveling of a lie that had grown too comfortable to challenge until it choked me. But beneath all of it, there was relief. Because silence is a strange thing. It pretends to protect you. It gives you the illusion of control. But really, it just hands your story to someone else and hopes they'll tell it kindly. They don't. That's not cynicism. That's lived experience. And maybe that's why I'm here speaking now, not as the girl behind the platform, not even as the CEO on the paperwork, but as the woman who finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. The thing no one tells you about reclaiming your voice is that it doesn't come back all at once. It returns in pieces your own name on a screen, a line of code. Someone finally sees a teenager writing to say, I started building to a podcast, where you don't edit out your stumbles, a text from your father that says, proud of you with no qualifiers. And then one day you wake up and realize you don't flinch when someone says your name in a meeting. You sit at the head of the table. You speak first. You don't wait to be asked. But still, I think about that question. Did you build this? And now, if someone were to ask again, I would say more than yes. I would say, I built it when no one thought I could. I built it quietly, then loudly. I built it after being erased. I built it while being underestimated, misrepresented, and overlooked. And I kept building even when it cost me comfort, family, peace, and years of my own belief in myself. And now I build with my name on every commit. I build with women and girls and everyone who's ever been told you're not the type, or you're not the founder, or you're just the support. I build with people who've been told to dim down, pipe down, sit down, and I build things that tell them stand up. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever been in a room where someone else spoke over you, where your work was claimed, your value, questioned, your silence mistaken for absence, I want you to ask yourself, what are you building? And more importantly, whose name is on it? It's not too late. Put your name on it. Speak up. Build louder, because your story deserves to be told by the person who lived it. You. Title. Thumbnail. Text. Title. My brother. Took credit for my startup. Then the investor looked at me and said, why didn't you say anything? Main character. Soraya Llewellyn. 32 software engineer, introvert, underestimated by family. Thumbnail text. He said I built it all in front of the investors. But when they asked me one question, I just nodded. The room went silent, and my brother turned white. The deal shifted.